trauma-based mind control. That's what it is. Monarch programming, MK Ultra, the Montauk Project, or as has been reported in England, Project Mannequin. And the original concept of the Manchurian Candidate, sending an agent out and they have an ulterior motive, an alternative agenda, mission that's buried in their subconscious. And they're not even aware. They think they're doing something very mundane. They famously tried it with a lady called Candy Jones.
Oh, Candy Jones?
You know Candy Jones?
No, I haven't heard.
She was like a pin-up girl in the 50s.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they sent her off on a flight, and she went and had a cup of tea with the guy at the other end, and gave him a bunch of flowers or whatever, and then came home. And on her return, the CIA interrogated her and said, "What did you do?" And she said, "I just went and had a cup of tea with this guy." But what she wasn't aware of was that she'd been given a long secret message under hypnosis. She'd got on this flight, gone over there, had a cup of tea with this guy, who happened to be a CIA operative at the other end waiting for her. He puts her under the trance again, using hypnosis, gets the information, the secret message, and then wakes her up out of the trance afterwards, So she leaves just thinking they've had a cup of tea, when she's not even aware of the fact that of the message she's had in her head, because hypnosis is that powerful, And then they realized, hang on, this will safeguard our operatives against if they get captured, it'll protect them against, not protect them, but protect the information.
Yeah.
Because even under interrogation, you can physically torture someone and they won't have the information to hand because it's buried using hypnosis. So they thought, ideal. Now none of our agents can divulge any sensitive information because it's so far buried in their heads under hypnosis that they're not even aware of the fact that they know this information. Instead of having to send in a whole Special Forces SAS, you could just send one mind-controlled assassin who had really enhanced abilities. Because that's what the Super Soldier program's all about, is about maximizing the potential of one human to fulfill the most, I suppose, the greatest military purpose possible, So that covers so many different aspects, from espionage to being an assassin to whatever it is, and even darker stuff than that. So it works, it makes sense, it's highly unethical, but of course what we know about these people who do it, American military is they don't have that many scruples, come on.
Well, their soldiers are expendable, that's the whole point, isn't it?
And where did it come from? I've done my history. It goes back to a thing called Operation Paperclip. After World War II, the Allies went in and found all these Nazi scientists, hundreds of them, and found that actually they were researching all this kind of stuff like mind control. And it worked. I'm a very good friend of Dave Marrow, and Dave Marrow is someone who apparently went through an MK Ultra style Black Op military training, the works, and is apparently now here in Taunton, Somerset, as I suppose you could say part of a sleeper cell. But what worries us is, whilst we think the project may have been done and done with, there's always the possibility that he might, they might just have him on the side, waiting for another opportune time in the future, who knows. So it feels like there's a race against the clock to find out what really happened.
My real mother was allegedly deaf and dumb. She couldn't look after me, no record of a father. All very mysterious. Story is, this is quite a weird story. On my record, adoption notes, when I got them just recently, she goes missing for 9 months. This woman who's deaf and dumb, can't talk, can't speak, doesn't know nothing about anything, didn't even know what a baby was. I had to draw pictures of what a baby was to my mother, Jennifer Manderson, 'cause she knew what was happening to her. She goes missing for 9 months, turns up on my grandmother's doorstep with me in her stomach, and sort of no one knows what's happened to her, where she's been. She gets put in a psychiatric unit, gives birth to me in a hospital, Royal Berkshire Hospital, and doesn't hold me or anything, just gives birth, and she's taken away, I'm taken away.
These people, and Dave doesn't seem to be any different. He it's from before you could talk. You're adopted as a toddler, essentially. So disposable person, they adopt them, brought in, they're looked after by a family where the man's, works for intelligence, but maybe it's a couple, both parents are in on it, and if not, then the wife is probably under hypnosis to, you see nothing here, that kind of thing. So anyway, the intelligence family is supposed to bring up the adoptive child, and they don't have to wait for this child to get older. The programming starts right away, from before they could talk. It's all about subjecting them to enough trauma to split the mind. Once you split the mind, you can easily compartmentalize different alters, as they're called, different personalities. So you've deliberately giving them multiple personality disorder, and a lot of these people are coming out now being diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, and this ability to dissociate and go into a different personality. And what they would program in was, okay, we need a drug runner to do this, that, the other, keep the black ops, black budget going, we need an assassin, we need a prostitute, we need, a spy, and all of these personalities can be programmed into one person, so that instead of having to worry about a whole team and the expense of all of that, you've just got one universal soldier.
Before I was adopted and fostered, I was looked after by a guy called Thomas Crow. He used to be linked with the Eagles. I think he even played with them a few times. Thomas Crow was around about the age of 2, 3, went to the Orkney Islands about the age of 4, 5. I was taken there by a guy called Chris Marrow. He bit of a nefarious character in his own way, took me there after being adopted and fostered. I was adopted into an incest family. We hear stories about this all the time, but I knew this was going on long before I read anything about these kind of things. I thought I was kind of unique in this situation, and that was always part of the problem. But I was in an incest family. Again, embarrassed as I was, when I got older and realised that what I was going through was wrong, I realised I had to do something about it, and I tried.
I think it actually goes back to ancient Egypt. They were the first people who actually used hypnosis. Then it went through the so-called Merovingian bloodlines as a way of controlling their heirs, and therefore controlling their dynasty, because it was a dynastic thing. That's why you find that today the mind control is done in a generational project. So children are adopted into it. It's quite far-reaching. Went through the so-called Illuminati bloodlines. That's why it was also later called the Monarch program.
That's where my experiences of ritual abuse began. But again, wasn't too sure about what was going on. I didn't really know what was happening. I knew it was bad and wrong, but as a child you don't understand these things. I can remember being taken to castles and stuff and programming. I remember being drugged, hallucinating, being drugged about the age of 5 by some men. Something to do with Alice in Wonderland, kind of getting bigger and smaller. They tried to sacrifice me at some point around the age of between 4 and 6. All I can remember is being pulled up to the cross, and somehow someone intervened or something, and don't know, I'm not sure.
Where was this?
This was on the Orkney Islands.
Can you name the school or the home? Or
there's a place called Horries, and there's a place called the Scarab Brae, which is an ancient, there's lots of archaeology. It's quite blurry, sort of, because I was drugged and stuff as well.
You mentioned that this was a scandal in the early 90s. Was the police involved? Were the raids involved?
CID, Child Protection Social Services, raided the island looking for a satanic paedophile network. Labour Party threw it out as a witch hunt, as a myth, even though, due to lack of evidence, even though there were countless testimonies,
Now, MK Ultra wasn't just one project, it was the code name for an umbrella of different projects, all under that one thing, and then there's the Montauk project and various others. But the Monarch program was when they actually rolled it out and thought, okay, this works, we can use it, let's go. And that's where you had normal people in society being programmed, lots of service personnel being programmed, lots of people who worked in all key positions. And now I believe today that Monarch programming is so prevalent, it's in your face.
My father took a cup and a knife out into the garden, and there's two guys holding this goat. It's the first time it happened a couple of times, about 3 or 4 times, and basically he slit the goat's throat in front of me. I'm can't be more than 7 years old at this point, and blood starts pouring out. He fills the cup with blood. I'm forced to drink it, then I black out, pass out, traumatized. Happened a few times. Wasn't quite sure why they were doing it, but then later on I came to find out that it was to do with ritual abuse.
All of these familiar symptoms that show up in all of these people's stories is, yeah, the family had connections with the military, family had connections with Freemasonry, he was adopted.
There was a sexual ritual kind of thing went on once. I want to go too much into the details of it, but there's about 30 or 40 children on the island. It's all pretty nasty stuff. Again, the sacrifices, don't know, I'm not sure, but from my memories, they tried to sacrifice me. It was animal sacrifices, made to look at dead animals, repetitive abuse, from being beaten about to sexual abuse to...
In this country, there's 9 of us, I would say, in my group, as in terms of people I'm in contact with.
Can you name them?
James Casbolt, he's one of them. Matt Todd, he's one of them. And Dave, he's a third one. And I'm naming those 3 because they're already on your video. So they've already come out on your video and said this. So that's
And you've got
why.
6 others.
Yeah. They have more detailed memories than he does. Much more.
I don't remember as much as some of the other testimonies that I've heard. My memories are limited. What I will say is that I know there was extensive use of drugs on me, radiation. They used electric shock treatment on me. Not treatment, but electric shock on me. Drugs, hypnosis.
All for what?
Create a soldier, a killer, an assassin. I wouldn't even say a soldier, just a killer. Someone they can manipulate, control. Someone they could use. Someone they could
So
use.
how are you currently under control, or do you?
I'm a sleeper.
Yeah.
No, it's like I'm down like this. It's like a dark cloud comes over.
This is why you're not looking straight to the camera that much.
I find it difficult.
And you mentioned certain schools in this area and where you were brought up here yourself.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, he remembers people from a little school called, well, it's just in Langport, in Somerset. He went to a school in Wellington, which is just down the road from Taunton in Somerset. So, I don't want to upset anyone who went to those schools, but local schools in the area, and that's what he remembers. But he doesn't remember specifically who went there, or otherwise he'd have traced them already if he could have done, So it's tricky.
They put me under hypnosis. Remember being told to count to 10, you start to wake up.
When did this happen? At what circumstances? Where were you when this was happening?
Around Wellington and Taunton. Told to count to 10, people clicking their fingers, while I developed complex post-traumatic stress from people clicking their fingers and putting me into trance, people calling out post-traumatic suggestions, always being put into a trance. Still now, it's happening now. And
when you say it's happening now, has it happened
not
this week?
right this moment,
Yeah.
but like always something, if a click goes off or someone says a certain word or 1 sugar or 2 sugars, that's a trigger.
Yeah.
Bad boy as well, that's a trigger.
Because you're brainwashing, because you're using mind control on these kids and hypnosis from when they were a kid, a lot of the popular themes are Wizard of Oz is one of the major ones, Wizard of Oz programming, and there's Peter Pan, it's another big Disney movie, there's Snow White they use as well.
Snow White, the Seven Dwarfs.
In all of these, there's a scene where they go through a transitional state. So Alice in Wonderland, sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Alice in Wonderland goes through the looking glass. Now, MI5 are alleged to have used this Alice in Wonderland style monarch programming, where they're actually, because they're lazy now, they're using bits of the script, and it's all under hypnotic suggestion. So when someone says you go through the rabbit hole, you know, to a someone who's been programmed to have that specific phrase. So I mean, you can watch the movie, you'll be fine. You wouldn't respond to a post-hypnotic trigger just from watching the movie. I'm talking about you've been taken through a hypnotic induction, watching segments of this film where Snow White falls asleep for 1,000 years, and then you go into your trance, and now all someone has to do is kiss you on the cheek to wake you up, or this kind of thing as a post-hypnotic trigger. So the hypnotist would say, you know, when I say you go over the rainbow, you know, you will fall into this state, and that's where they can take the kid out of school. Because remember, these kids are living normal, supposedly normal lives. Yeah. Take them out of school one day, put them in a trance like Darren Brown demonstrates, yeah. Say the words over the rainbow. I mean, this may be making programmees who are possibly researching this field twitchy.
Was this at home, or were you taken to a lab or a
Some
clinic?
of it was done in my home. The abduction was somewhere else, taken somewhere.
By whom? By?
I believe it's orchestrated by my father. I believe that a lot of it was orchestrated by my father.
His father has put him through this, adopted him, and then put him through this whole thing. And if you're adept at hypnosis, then you don't really need to explain yourself to the close people around you, because you've probably been messing with their heads as well. So I'm talking this guy's wife, you know, it's a case of you see nothing here.
Started getting memories back of being in a military hospital. All these like military surgeons around, green canvas, like something like a MASH almost, something like a sort of...
A field hospital?
Yeah, definitely. I remember having something inserted into the base of my spine, metallic.
You can trigger someone. A lot of these people have chips.
Age 20, I goes to bed one night after meeting someone who said I was going to be taken. And I wake up, paralysed, can't move. There's white lights everywhere, bright lights everywhere. My body lifts up. Just before I hit the ceiling, everything goes black. Next thing I can remember, falling back into my bed on top of the covers, and there's something moving about in my back. I got examined by a doctor, and I've been treated for amnesia just before. And he said, have you ever been in a car crash or had an accident, Dave, or damaged your back in any way? I was like, well, no, not that I recall. And he said, well, you've suffered a massive trauma to your back and body and your spine. I was like, well, I don't remember anything. I was like, well, you have amnesia, David. I was like, well, okay. Take off my shirt, examines me, says, yeah, you've suffered a trauma. You can't walk properly. You're limping, your back's out of place.
Disturbing stuff there from Miles Johnston. Join us for more disturbing stuff after the break.